8:03 p.m. and I call this regular meeting of the Bowie City Council to order. We will begin as customary, as we do every meeting, with the Pledge of Allegiance. We ask everyone who is able to stand and rise and recite with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The council is present this evening with the exception of at-large member Henri Gardner, so there is a quorum of council members here sufficient to conduct city business. Does any council member have a request for an addition, deletion, or amendment of the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we remove item G from the consent agenda for consideration at a future meeting, please.
We will be removing item G from the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Are there any other additions, deletions?
What's the rationale?
Excuse me?
Rationale.
For consideration later point, just an opportunity to review the matter.
Okay.
You should have a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Do I need to call for the question?
Call for a vote, yes, sir.
Question?
The motion was to move for reconsideration of this matter at a future meeting.
Okay. The motion has been made and second for reconsideration of this matter for a future meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. We have arrived at the time now for any public comment. Has anyone signed up for comment?
No, sir.
Okay. So we'll be moving forward for presentations. Do we have any presentations
No, sir.
this evening? No presentations. All right. Are there any city boards and committees appointments this evening?
No,
Any
sir.
council members?
No, sir.
Okay. I'd like to call on the city manager for his report.
Mr. Mayor, I have one item to report, and as a reminder that on the 6th of December, Friday, between 11 and 2 will be the city's holiday luncheon, which is an opportunity to celebrate our employees, and we'll be presenting awards for longevity awards and excellence awards. So, and I encourage you all, if you're not busy at that time, to come by. We'll have some really good food and a really good time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Moving to the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, let's move on to old business. Is there any old business?
No, sir.
Okay. What about new business? Is there any new business?
Yes, sir. We do have the Chase Bank ATM at Collington Plaza. Frank?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, Frank Stevens of the City Planning Staff here tonight to review with you a detailed site plan for a proposed ATM automatic teller machine in Collington Plaza. I'll be speaking from our report that was sent to you dated November 21st, and would turn your attention to a PowerPoint show that goes along with it. The ATM is proposed in the parking lot of Collington Plaza, and I'll refer to the first attachment, which is on the screen now. Over to the right, or the eastern side of the slide, is 301. Through the center of the site is the main access that runs east to west. To the north is the giant food store. In this location, Walmart is in the southwestern area of the property, and the proposed ATM is in this location right here. The property is zoned CSC Commercial Shopping Center, where ATMs are permitted use by right in the CSC zone. Under this proposed development, approximately 12 parking spaces will be removed as part of the construction of this improvement. However, there will be no handicap spaces lost, and the remaining number of parking spaces on the site will continue to exceed the required minimum for this particular use, for the entire shopping center use. This is a site plan which shows what's proposed within the former 12 parking spaces. The ATM machine itself is located in this vicinity. As you can see, there's sufficient room for up to 3 cars to queue behind the car that's at the ATM, and there's room for the vehicle was just at the ATM to pull out back into the traffic aisle. The ATM is proposed in a landscaped barrier, a landscaped median, about 6 feet wide, landscaped. This new landscaped island here will be constructed to help direct traffic out of the site, and likewise this existing landscaped island will be enlarged to kind of guide the vehicles into the travel lane. The traffic flow runs from south to north. It's about 12 feet wide and can accommodate 1 car. There's no side-by-side room for vehicles to move up side by side. There is a do not enter sign proposed in this location. We've requested that an enter sign be constructed at the entrance to the drive-through, and the applicant has agreed to do that. We've also requested that additional pavement painted directional arrows be placed on the pavement to indicate the travel flow of the vehicles, and the applicant has agreed to do that. All of the landscaping that's proposed is native, non-invasive landscaping. This is attachment 4 of the report. It shows the cross-section of the ATM and the housing, and different views of the ATM within the island where it's located. We're recommending approval of this detailed site plan with 3 conditions that are included on page 3 of our report, and the applicant has indicated his agreement with our recommendation, including the conditions. That concludes the staff presentation.
Thank you. Is there anyone here tonight representing as a third party for the Chase Bank application?
Good evening. For record, Dan Lynch with law firm McNamee Hosey here on behalf of the applicant TKO Installations. We're here tonight speaking.
If you could, please make sure you state your name and your address for us, please.
Okay. With McNamee Hosey, our address is 6411 Ivy Lane, Greenbelt, Maryland. Again,
Thank you.
it's Dan Lynch. Here tonight on behalf of TKO Installations, the applicant. As Mr. Stevens correctly noted, my client's proposing to add an ATM to the existing parking lot of Collington Plaza. Just a bit of background, this property is subject to an annexation agreement, and part of that annexation agreement, the City Council retained the right to approve any site plans and any amendments to those site plans. Thus, we're here tonight with this amendment. As part of this, we're going to be deleting parking spaces, but I think you should understand that that'll in no way reduce the parking on the site below that was normally required for this shopping center. I think even with the addition of this ATM, the shopping center will still provide in excess of 105 parking spaces over and above what's normally required under the zoning ordinance of Prince George's County. We reviewed the staff report on this, and I've spoken to Mr. Stevens about his conditions. We're in agreement with those conditions. As a matter of fact, we've already submitted a revised plan to staff, so they do have that in their possession. And hopefully with this City Council support, we can move forward and install this improvement to Collington Center. I'd be happy to answer any questions this council has with regard to this application. Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, is there anyone who speak?
No, sir.
Okay. I guess we call for the,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to motion to accept the recommendation with the 3 conditions outlined.
A second.
it's been moved and properly second that we accept the application. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. City Manager, could you, as we move to the Maryland Park and Planning Commission?
The Bowie and vicinity area master plan, Mr. Miners will take the lead on that.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. For the record, I'm Joe Miner, the Planning Director. With us this evening are several representatives from the Planning Department, Prince George's County. That's the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. We're talking about the beginnings of the updating of the 2006 Bowie and Vicinity Area Master Plan. That's the plan that governs land use and sets the requirements for zoning within the entire area, including the city of Bowie. So they're just getting started with the update process, and they're here to give you an idea of the timeline and what the project will entail. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Scott Rowe.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Scott Rowe with the Prince George's County Planning Department of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. We're excited to be here tonight to discuss the imminent beginning of the Bowie and Vicinity Master Plan, which is a comprehensive master plan for the city of Bowie and the surrounding communities. Very excited to partner with Mr. Minert and your staff on this exciting project that's underway. A comprehensive master plan has several elements. It's an implementation item and a visioning document that implements Plan 2035, Prince George's County's award-winning general plan. When we're doing a master plan, it's more than just land use. We're looking at economic prosperity, development, employment, transportation and mobility issues, the natural environment, housing and neighborhoods, community heritage, culture and design, healthy communities, how we can improve everyone's access to health care, to healthy food, public facilities, parks and recreation, etc. As Mr. Minert said, the last plan for Bowie and Vicinity was approved in 2006. This plan will have the same boundaries as that plan, covers 59 square miles. So approximately 32% of the plan area is within the city of Bowie. This plan will replace the 2006 master plan and also the 2010 approved Bowie State Mark Station sector plan. We anticipate, though, that it will carry forward quite a few of the recommendations in those two plans, especially the plan for the Mark Station. We really want to build upon the work that the city did and improving its sustainability plan in 2016. We partnered with Mr. Meinert and with the city on that, and it was a great experience, not only in the recommendations that came out of it, but also the public and civic engagement process, where we were able to use a number of unique and unprecedented public and civic outreach tools to really get people to participate and to solicit input from residents, workers, and other stakeholders by meeting them where they are, not just having a traditional public hearing, giving one of these presentations and taking questions, but really trying to engage with people. The plan really is, we anticipate that the plan will focus on several key areas. If there's one thing that two things that characterize this area is that it has a wealth of existing stable neighborhoods. Much of the developable land in this area has been approved for residential development or other development. So we really want to focus in the neighborhoods on maintaining a high quality of life, finding a way to enhance amenities, whether it be through public facilities or through connecting people to opportunities through transportation improvements, whether it be trails or pedestrian amenities, working on our always complex and challenging highway network. And also preserving what needs to be preserved. We have a lot of environmentally sensitive and rural and agricultural areas within this plan area, and we want to keep them that way. We want to look at where can we accommodate the future market growth in areas where growth should occur, while protecting those areas where it should not occur. That being said, there's several areas of focus where we anticipate growth will occur over the next 25 years. One, of course, is the Bowie Local Town Center, which was designated by Plan 2035 as a town activity center for this portion of Prince George's County. It includes the Bowie Town Center, shopping center, surrounding commercial developments, and also the Melford site. Of course, Bowie State University and the Bowie State MARC Station are key focus areas for this plan. The university is constantly expanding and looking for ways to be really a regional, if not national leader in research and development. We want to figure out through this plan effort how to better integrate the university with its surrounding community, making sure that we're taking advantage of this prime regional resource that's here in the Bowie vicinity area to make sure that it's an opportunity to connect people to the university and also to get the university more engaged in the broader community. Obviously, the MARC station is the only fixed guideway transit station in the area, so maximizing that asset and the services that are provided there to connect people along the Northeast Corridor is critical. Old Town Bowie, a number of plans have come and gone for Old Town, and we're looking at again, what are some opportunities to rejuvenate this area, to breathe life into some of the commercial areas of Old Town, and maximize the asset of its history. The trade zone in Collington, in the southern part of the plan area, is a location where transportation, logistics, and warehousing and flex office research and development is possible. And we want to see how we can capitalize upon that to maximize and increase the number of jobs we can bring into the area. And then we have three major corridors where most of the commercial property is located. 450, of course, 197, and US 301 Maryland 3 corridor. And these are all areas that we anticipate growth will occur in the future. We want to identify where there are opportunities for growth and where there's opportunities to rejuvenate or revitalize commercial shopping centers and other developments that are there. I'm going to turn it over to Andrew McCrae. He's the acting project manager for the project. He's going to discuss kind of the process and next steps, and then I'll come back with a conclusion.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. So building on the context that Scott Rowe displayed earlier, now we'll talk a little bit about the public engagement side of things, which we see as extremely important to this plan. Not only do we talk about what we need to have in the plan, we need to be discussing who's a part of the plan and who has input. So highlighted above, you'll see several different engagement tools that we plan to put forth throughout this process. Also, the picture in the background is an event that we attended earlier this year, Bowie National Night Out, where we were present giving information as far as the upcoming project is concerned. And as you see highlighted are several different engagement tools which we think are effective for a robust engagement process, looking to engage various stakeholders, whether it be age, ethnicity, race, gender. We understand that this is a bit of a melting pot of a community, and we want to be able to fully be committed to that process. Some of those tools of engagement that we have are office hours. We want to be actively engaged and involved in setup, in which we anticipate to set up shop at various locations within the community. In addition to that, we want to be extremely active on social media, throughout our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages, which we feel like is another way of engaging people. And we do plan to have traditional public meetings as well, open houses, and et cetera. But building on that, more specifically, an engagement tool that we've kicked off already is regarding stakeholder interviews. We've already conducted a few. This picture right here is actually one that was held last week with a transportation group. And we see this as an opportunity to really bring together key stakeholders to help facilitate discussion, having a range of different perspectives and ideas to come across. So some of those groups include transportation, public facilities, retail and commercial corridor, and we have a host of meetings that we've had already and that are upcoming, in which we will pull from and try to get some insight into how are these areas doing, how are these focus areas doing. We already had an opportunity to meet with the City of Bowie staff, which Joe Minor and the city manager were present at, just pretty much introducing the project to them and allowing them to give us some insight and their thoughts on just how we can move forward with this project. Next, we'll move forward and anticipate the next steps, and I'll pass that on to Scott.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So yes, this is the very beginning of the process. We've engaged a consultant, WXY Architecture and Urban Design, and a consultant team with a strong local team to kind of gather existing conditions, looking at data, looking at the information we're gathering through our stakeholder interviews, and identify what are the existing conditions, what are the key challenges, and what are the opportunities that exist from just a data and analysis standpoint and trends that are occurring economically, transportation, demographically, and what that might mean. And as part of that process, we'll be coming out to the community, as Mr. McCray talked about, to just try to see if that's, if we're capturing everything, are we missing anything, are there any major issues that we need to be aware of that need addressing that may not show up through an analysis of data and through analysis of just the institutional knowledge of our stakeholders that we've engaged to date. With that, some of the formal process, this is a formal master plan for Prince George's County. The County Council is anticipated to initiate the formal legislative process in February of 2020. We'll have a public open house to discuss existing conditions in May, we're anticipating, and looking at our consultant's final recommendations, which will include kind of the final analysis of existing conditions and also some of their recommendations or how we might address some of the issues, the challenges and opportunities that are presented in this area in September. The staff will go about drafting the actual master plan document, which will be released for public comment, we hope, in April 2021. We'll have a joint public hearing with the County Council and the Planning Board in June, and then hopefully the Planning Board would adopt the plan in September of 2021 with County Council approval in March. All along this time frame, we hope to be engaged with the residents of Bowie, with people that work here, with the business community, with stakeholders, and also with you. We anticipate coming back before the council to solicit your input. May reach out in one-on-one or small group meetings, but really we are very interested in hearing what the City Council has to say, what you're hearing from your constituents, ideas that you have. This is intended to be a very collaborative process and a very inclusive process that we hope helps us identify a consensus community vision, which we will follow up with goals for both growth and preservation. and policies and strategies that are implementable, and that bring all of the necessary implementing partners to the table so that we can ensure that everyone's on the same page of what we need to do as a government, the private community, the institutional sector, nonprofits, everyone working together to implement the community's vision. With that, Mr. McCray and I will take any questions that you have.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for being here this evening. I think it's important that we look at this as a collaborative approach to doing the master plan. For me personally, having some history with it, the one question I do have, and we'll get a chance to talk about that, I'm sure, as we go through the process, is what the plan is for the MARC station. The historical perspective is that originally it was talked about giving that land to Bowie State, the Bowie State Foundation, as they were doing that. And then there was another plan that came in, and at this point, I don't know where the county had designated it as surplus property. The county council had voted on it with the expectation that it would be given to Bowie State Foundation. Some of those things have changed, so as time has gone, I'd really be interested to see where that's going. What is the plan now for that?
And generally speaking, that is kind of an evolving target, as there's several things going on at the MARC station simultaneously. First of all, the Maryland Transit Administration is currently doing a study of transit-oriented development opportunities at each of its stations. So looking at what the 2010 sector plan recommends, which is basically kind of both private and institutional mixed-use development on that property that is northwest of the station that's currently owned by Prince George's County, how best to utilize the university to kind of spearhead some sort of private development interest there. So MTA is looking at their property that's basically the parking lots around the station. The university is kicking off their campus master plan this fall, looking at not only what they hope to do with the existing campus, but any expansion opportunities on surrounding properties. And also the county is currently seeking designation from the state of Maryland as a designated transit-oriented development, which may free up some grant funding to look at how better to improve the station and the surrounding property. Periodically, the county will put out an RFP to try to solicit developer interest in the property. I think they're kind of looking to see what all these parallel efforts, including our master plan, will come up with, but it's an evolving kind of saga, as it were, and they're trying to. Everyone's at the table, which is been inconsistent over the years. So everyone's kind of at the table right now, and hopefully we'll get to something that really is an asset for the region. It's one of the larger publicly owned sites in the county that's developable. So there are some environmental constraints, but there are pretty significant opportunities there. And like I said earlier, I don't anticipate that the vision for that property would change much through this process, but just be refined with the modern and the current players that are at the table. We got new university leadership, new county leadership, and just seeing where it goes from there.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. We appreciate it. As far as the public engagement period, it sounds like it's going to be extensive over a long period of time, which I appreciate. Generally speaking, from a logistical point of view, how far in advance could we expect to know about specific meetings where the public would be invited to come and offer feedback at various stages of the public meeting process?
I think we would strive, obviously we would strive for as early as possible, but we are trying to be flexible and be responsive to when we find out about meetings in the community. If there's any opportunity for us to show up and kind of give our quick pitch about the plan and solicit some information, direct people to our website, and where they can provide us with information, that will certainly be great. As far as I know, we'll try to get out information as soon as we can, generally 3 to 6 weeks in advance.
Okay.
That's what we kind of shoot for. It does evolve as the calendar gets busier, and we're trying to do as much outreach as we can, make sure that nobody goes unheard.
Sure. Yeah, 3 to 6 weeks is a good timeline. I think with enough time, logistically, we should be able to get decent turnout at some of these meetings. Just as a general comment, much as is in the case in some of our neighboring jurisdictions right now, development is issue number one for our residents. We just came off an election, and I think everyone on here would agree that this was like priority number one. Sure. For people in Bowie, as it is for folks in neighboring Anne Arundel and to an extent Howard as well. And the biggest concern that residents have is they're seeing a lot of new development come down the pike and increased density, and they're seeing all the ill effects of this, added congestion on the roads. 301's a bit of a parking lot nowadays, but they're not feeling too many of the benefits from the new development, and so residents' general attitude towards new growth is poor. I think that would say is an understatement, but it's poor. And so just so you're aware, I think at least for me, and I don't want to speak on all my colleagues' behalf, but I think for most of us up here, that's probably the biggest thing on our mind moving forward right now. We recognize that the age of commercial retail is changing. Amazon has changed things. There's an oversupply retail nationally. I get that. And so we will experience change on that front. And I recognize that redesign and mixed use and some new residential in certain places strategically will be essential to protect retail where it can be done. My hope, though, is that for our kind of high retail commercial centers, especially on 450 and 197, my hope personally is that the goal is to try and find alternatives to just added residential to protect the commercial centers. So rather than just plopping down shoebox apartments behind giant, to kind of keep Free State going as just one hypothetical example, that we look at redesigns, placemaking, and kind of these alternative modern design principles as a way of bringing people in, keeping these as destinations where people will come to shop other than just going online, but minimizing the need for greater residential footprints. And then beyond that, the only other big thing I can say on my residents' behalf is just not increasing density in areas that are already rural or zoned for low density housing. I think that's a big fear as well, that particularly like with the Jesuit property just outside city limits on 450 and 301, that's one of the major concerns, is that they do not want to see forests come down in place for anything, but in particular in place for kind of high density housing. That's a big non-starter for folks. Beyond that, it sounds like we're in the really early phases, so I mean, specific questions, this is way premature. But yeah, that's my main thing, just making sure we have ample opportunities for public input, that we're notified in meetings well in advance. You kind of get an impression from us of what our residents' feeling on most development is. And as far as Old Town Bowie, since that's in my neck of the woods, I would definitely recommend that at least some of the public input focus very specifically on that group, because we have a lot of residents there, some who've been around forever, some who are brand new, who have a lot of thoughts about Old Bowie specifically, since it's kind of its own little place in an interesting junction of state, county, and city jurisdiction. They're going to need some specific attention to the extent that you're able to give it that. Other than that, I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. And I would if I dare, correct you just in one thing. It's never too premature to provide us with input. We are certainly open to it. We definitely want to hear from you and from your residents as early as often as possible. The more time we have being aware of an issue, the more effort we can spend towards trying to collaboratively arrive at a solution.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, and thank you for coming, and Mr. McCray as well. Thank you for the time this evening. Appreciate your starting off this project. First of all, can you provide a copy of the deck to staff, and
Yes.
And so we can arrange to have it available for public dissemination as well? That would be greatly appreciated. Yes. Timing of the project, I saw February, 2 years, or is it a year and a half?
It's approximately year and a half until we have a plan done. Generally speaking, that's about how long it takes us to draft the plan. We've already got we engaged the consultant early on to kind of give us that factual base that we can draw upon. But generally speaking, we're looking at kicking it off in February and going through April. So it's a little over about 14 months.
Great. I'd like to suggest one item. You mentioned it already, project stakeholders and getting them involved. And it may be at risk to the timeline, but I think it's critical that we ensure that there is ample dissemination of this whole concept as well as the dates in the particular meetings. I know that even for this evening's meeting, some people didn't get notice that they would like to have had. And I think that this is something we'll have to work with staff on. I hope you would, if you've got ideas as well, just to make sure we broaden this, because this ties into what's happened recently in our community, where people wake up and they find that there's a notice posted out on a parcel of land, and everybody gets quite concerned when they realize that there are already crowded streets and schools are now facing some additional development, and then the constant notice is this, well, this has already been discussed earlier, it's part of the plan, we're almost done with it, and now you're getting to find out. So I think it's imperative that our constituents, our residents in this area, get an opportunity to participate in this, to understand how important this part of the process is, so that there aren't any surprises and people know in advance. Because I think you're probably aware we've had some contentious issues around here of late, and you know, at the risk of repeating what people already know, but obviously, you know, we had issues with a development in high density housing going in a commercial use area, and we have concerns in this in these neighborhoods that it's inconsistent with their immediate neighbors, and that some of these properties aren't really conducive to that use, even though they might be, quote, zoned that way, but there is no provision for what's happening, you know, in the areas right next to them. And there are certain parts of the community that would really like to preserve their history, their culture, the background of the community, and they're genuinely feel that this is threatened with some of this recent development and so forth. So we certainly have concerns with that, and there is a very real concern because of recent decisions to allow mixed use in all areas where there's retail to include high-density housing, which is a very significant concern that we've had in the past. And, you know, I, of course, speaking here, am greatly concerned by that and opposed to it, but I know that that's not what this is about. But we do need to make sure we put in some protections, and we recognize that as we're going through this process. We also, obviously, which was mentioned earlier, the Jesuit property. One of the things I noted in your deck, you didn't speak to preserving the rural tier, but I assume that that's one of the, I saw it highlighted in green, but I assume that that's one of the intents as well, to preserve the tier that's designated as a rural tier for this.
Yes.
Okay.
We take our lead from the Prince George's County Council. They approved a resource conservation plan in 2017 that in effect said that the rural and agricultural areas should not be altered. Okay. And we certainly are looking to preserve all of it in this particular plan. Of course, we'll hear from stakeholders, but it's our opinion that the rural and agriculture area is defined by a growth boundary. Generally speaking, it would be a best practice that you don't grow outside the boundary until you finish growing inside the boundary, of which we have plenty of places in Prince George's County to accommodate that growth. So yes, we certainly are aware of that. One thing I did want to say is that as part of our stakeholder outreach, what we want to try to do, just generally as a county planning agency, in addition to just this project, is make sure we're getting information out there so that our residents are informed and they understand what's going on and have a better idea of some of the trade-offs that occur when you have growth and development issues. Not everyone's going to get the outcome that they desire, but we certainly want to make sure they understand all sides, that that we're doing this project in such a transparent way that people understand all the different factors at play, and that they can make an informed decision moving forward. Because there are a lot of things there are a lot of perceptions that the community will have. There's a lot of things that we as professional planners kind of know from our practice and our training, and we have to do a much better job as professionals in sharing that information and presenting it in a way that's understandable for people. We're very conscious of the fact that people are very busy, You know, residents who are here may have had a long commute just to get home. They're not feeling a night meeting. People are very busy. They have very busy lives, and we want to make sure that the information is available in a number of different media so that they have that. And we are aware, that we identified the 3 corridors here. Obviously, part of the timing of this project is in the interim. There may be a countywide zoning map amendment that would incorporate zoning changes that would allow for residential development at commercial shopping centers. And what we hope to accomplish as part of this planning process is working with individual and collectively with the shopping center owners to identify where's that appropriate, where's that strategically necessary, and where's that maybe that's not the best place for it. Obviously, we want, in general, we would like to have our most dense and intensive development where there's a range of transportation options, where people can walk to different uses, can walk to jobs, and not have to drive everywhere. So when we're looking at where we want to see mixed use, that's a conversation that we have to have with individual property owners, and this plan will have to have some policy recommendations in there that address the issue so that redevelopment is strategic. And it's not just, okay, now we can do it, so let's plop it everywhere. Because it's not just because, and it's something that hopefully I'm not speaking too far out of school, but we really want to be strategic and to work with property owners so that they see that where they have opportunities to grow and to provide the services and amenities that the community wants at a profit. And we don't want to get into this, we don't want to continue to facilitate the practice of people coming into the community who just buy up land and then figure out what they want to develop later. We want people, help people have a plan and understand that this is the community's vision for this area. This is what, if you build this, this is what the community will support. If you're not going to build this, this is something where you're going to see some opposition. And making sure that it's clear that, the community that we're doing this plan for, which is a very diverse and very broad community, knows how to participate in the process and knows how to get their voice heard, and what we can do to amplify that into the county's policies is just a success for us.
Mm-hmm. All right. A couple other quick comments. With that, with the rural tier, we also have the developing tier next to it, and I think we've seen also recently some transgressions in that area where we've seen things that were low density getting swapped out to higher density housing as well, say over at the airport. And I want to make sure that we kind of take that into account as we're going through, because there has been, once again, a continuing concern about that, and we want to make sure people have an opportunity to address that through this process as well. I will piggyback on Councilman Estev's comments about Old Town. We're looking for opportunity there as well, whether it's an arts district is certainly something that's been considered, and there may be some other development opportunities there too. And other than that, I'd like to thank you for your time this evening. Appreciate your answering questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any comments? Well, I'd like to just add a couple of comments before you go. Again, thank you for being here. I think you've heard the concern from some of the council members, but I think it's been a very loud voice from the community as a whole. One of the things we want to make sure is that as we work with park and planning, that being the city council, the citizens, planning board and all, we want to make sure that it's an iterative process. And it's one in which it's not just a presentation of information, but an actual collaboration of what we look to do with the city. We do have concerns as we move forward to make sure that the city grows, but it does so in a way that maintains our quality of life here. And that is so important to us. And it's so important to the citizens. And that's our responsibility to make sure we do that. So I just ask that as you try to build almost a consensus on how we move forward, and you talked about 32% of the area being Bowie, that you understand that, and that you take that to heart, and that you understand that we, as a city, I want to make sure that we have a true say-so in how we grow and how we prosper and who we are. So I think I speak for all of us as we look forward to working together to make sure that we come up with a master plan that accomplishes what we, and I say we, I mean the people, the citizens of Bowie, want to see for their city. And so on that note, thank you so very much for coming.
Absolutely.
And we truly look forward to working together.
Yes, we do too. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. At this time, I don't know of any other business,
No, sir. No other business.
so I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to adjournment into closed session. Statutory authority to close session, state government article subsection 3-305B7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter, and subsection 3-305B14, before a contract is awarded or bids are open, to discuss a matter directly related to a negotiation strategy or the contents of a bid or proposal, if public discussion or disclosure would adversely impact the ability of the public body to participate in the competitive bidding or proposal process.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
So moved. I would like to thank everyone for being here this evening. Before we take the vote, and just as a point of personal privilege, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Having said that, a call for the vote?
Aye.
Nay. Thank you. Return. I'll do this. There we go. I got through it.